Post-secondary institutions have aspirations to want to do the right things. And I think part of it is the play on word, and which is problematic. It's the right things. That there's an assumption on how, there's one way to do things right when there's multiple ways to address these big, wicked issues that are taking place on our campus. I think it starts by listening to people that are out there. Listening, but also at the same time, going above and beyond to invite these hidden voices to be able to say, you are valued here, and here's what's happening at our campus. I'd love to hear what are your recommendations and suggestions to foster more of an inclusive work and study culture. I don't believe that these invitations are extended enough. Often I think of the quote, who gets invited to the table, who gets to be part of the conversation determines what happened or what doesn't happen. From one of my favorite books, Fierce Conversation, so I just have to quote them. When you think about a quote like that, then it's important to be really intentional about who you're inviting to be part of those conversations and having more than one conversations and instances, because we live in a very complicated world. And I think by the time you've gathered enough perspective and information, it could change again. And so being able to say, this is an open conversation, that we're willing to have these ongoing, changing conversation anytime, and that you're more than welcome to come into my office to have these safe conversations is really important. That brings to my next point is, the willingness and the courage to get it wrong, but to relearn and try again. I think racism impact not just marginalized students who are the victims of racism, but I think for our ecosystem of our institutions as a whole, it impacts in a way that people can't be fully themselves, that they always feel like they have to hide chunks of themselves within their identity that they hold true value to. So when people can't completely be of themselves, they're not at their best. And we know that from looking at student engagement or faculty employee engagement literature, when you don't have that sense of belonging and community that you feel within where you study, where you work, retention is low. So as a result, we may see issues in students' persistence, employee engagement and retention. So that's one. When people can't truly be themselves, they have a tendency to assume what they think is mainstream identity. So there is one right way to do things. And so I worry about diversity. And it's, diversity is our strength. Learning from various opinions and perspectives, and understanding somebody who might have different ideas than you. We're an educational institution, and so there's no better space to be learning from variety of perspectives than being in school. I think it's a disservice, right? When people hide parts of themselves, they're not revealing to us their true strengths and talents that they do have that bring themselves alive. And so when we fail to see that in our marginalized population, we as an institution, as a classroom, or as an organization, we're not making the most out of their talents as well. So that's a shortcoming. Yesterday, a bunch of us were at the Robin Wall Kimmerer session, the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, when somebody asked her a question as a non-Indigenous faculty, how do you leverage Indigenous ways of knowing without coming across as appropriation? And she had a brilliant response. She's like, just go, have an open communication, ask. It's an academic community, so cite your sources. Be thankful, express gratitude to those who have taken the time to do this work. Acknowledge them, be that ally, be that upstander as opposed to a bystander, and always find ways to spotlight on things that are happening. People doing good things that are in their pockets that hardly get recognition. And then another thing in about getting things wrong is, she mentioned, like, people get things wrong. I get things wrong all the time, but it's how you go about owning your mistake, saying that, you know what, I may have misinterpreted something, I didn't completely understand your point of view. Help me understand. Let's have another conversation and try again, and invite them to go there with you. I definitely think that there's an impact being a faculty member, female, person of color. Sometimes instances come up that makes me question, does this have to do with, the person that I am or the identity that I bring that's getting this kind of reaction or treatment? So I can give you an example. In a former institution that I work at, from time to time I engage in team teaching opportunities. So there's me. That particular semester I was team teaching with another wonderful faculty member, white, male. I found myself in a moment where I have to give students some constructive feedback. They received an assignment, submission, and a mark that they weren't particularly happy with and decided to meet with me, so that was great. And as I was giving this individual feedback, they became really, really aggressive. And to the point where it was not productive to have the conversation anymore. As a result, we terminated the conversation. But then when talking with my co-faculty partner, what we decided to do is he should have the conversation instead, just to give that feedback. When I was also there, so the three of us were there, my faculty member, myself, and the student, when the three of us were meeting, it was very clear to me that the treatment that this particular student have on my white male faculty member was night and day. It was drastically different, much more respectful, a lot less aggressive. And so, I still to this day, I couldn't put my finger on it, but I can't help but wonder, did it have anything to do with my skin color, my ethnicity, my origin, my gender? I'd like to think that I'm generally a sympathetic human being. When aggression or microaggressions like this happen, I check myself first. Is it me? Is there anything that I could be doing differently to change the toxicity, the culture, the organization? As somebody who likes to overanalyze things, I question more than I should. Because of the person that I am. And even when thinking of particular scenarios at a former institution that I work at, even if that instance or that hot moment is in the rear view mirror, I still think about it and I reflect on it. There is trauma there, and there is continuing to question myself, even though that incident could have happened years ago. I think as a youthful-looking professional faculty member, there are times when I am at meeting tables where I am undermined due to what they believe are my lack of experience. I find myself needing to try hard to really demonstrate that it's not the number of years in your professional life that matters. It's what you put, the quality that you put in your years of professional life that matters. So I constantly feel like I'm up against the grain to need to prove myself and to be able to like dish out the titles that I've been, knowledge, or the context that I've worked at to really demonstrate my credibility with my colleagues. With the imposter syndrome, I think it's a lifelong struggle that I will have and I'll likely have. And I've come to the conclusion that it's something that I just have to manage. Feeling like half the time when I feel probably 99% confident, there's always that 1% going like, what if something goes wrong? What if you're not good enough? And I think in my tenure, in my professional journey so far, there has been folks that have been those voices in my head that's asking, I don't think you're good enough, and here's why. But then for me, I realized the thing that I need to do is just stand up for myself and say, I hear your opinion, thank you for that, but I disagree. And here's why. So at a former institution that I worked at, I submitted an application towards a program or opportunity. What I understood later on when the results came out, the results was all fine, but I understood that there was a committee member on the selection committee that have said they were in disbelief that I would have this many lines in my presentations, in my publications, because apparently it's their words that nobody could have done this much within a year. It's led me to think, I thought to myself, hey, maybe that's a backhanded compliment, not a nice one, but nonetheless a compliment, I guess. But like any good academic, I decided to go into research mode and learn more about that. So the terms that I've come to become very familiar with is the idea of a model minority. So, the idea that we need to work twice, 3 times as hard to prove that we are a model citizen, being a person of color, being part of a minority population. Another term that's in contrast to that, I've also come to understand, is the tall poppy syndrome or phenomenon, where the society or certain individuals in the society has expectations of where you are based on your age, based on your ethnicity, based on your background, or what they can see from your background. And then when you veer a little bit outside of the box, so if you're a tall poppy, they cut you off because their beliefs of you, you are acting in contrast with what they believe you should be doing. So when you put those two concepts together, we have a dissonance where you're supposed to be working twice and 3 times or a million times as hard, leading to those lines in your curriculum vitae, but then when you get too tall, they cut you off. In scenarios that I've encountered, I think it's funny because I've been told that I need to work to those ideals, and then once you reach those ideals and a little bit more, they're like, oh, you shouldn't be here, you're not good enough. There was a time when my English name was not attached to maybe like a roster or something, and somebody saw my Chinese name as my English name, which is Tim Yan, Timyan, 2 different words. And so when I walked into a meeting, they had told me, oh, we were expecting a guy named Tim, and wow, your English is so good, but where are you really from? So a triple whammy there of microaggressions. I took it with a sense of humor because the person ended up being a kind and thoughtful, and of course they apologized later. But I could imagine from time to time when Tim Yan is the name that shows up for me and I get mistaken by a completely different gender. I'm a believer that how you teach is sometimes just as important as what you teach. And so there are multiple ways that I include diversity, equity, and inclusion into my teaching, and also the sense of belonging as well. In my class, I get a diverse group of students that come in from various faculties, from various walks of life experiences, international, domestic, etc., etc. So very, very diverse. I start off with the class helping them understand that, while everybody is, treated fairly, not everybody, I won't be treating you equally because you all need different things to be successful. So, that catches them off guard a little bit, but when you think about it, there's some truth in it. So one way that I do that is I don't have deadlines in my course assignments anymore. I call them target dates, because every student have different schedules. You might be taking a couple of classes, juggling work, you might be taking 6 courses, and you might have family responsibilities at home. So I tell my students, here are some target dates that you might want to follow for those that really need to have those dates. However, on the day when the assignment is due, for whatever reason, you're completely unhappy with your submission, and if it only takes you maybe a couple of days that you can revise and submit something that you're happy with, don't even email me. It's okay. But if you need more than a week to get stuff done, that's when you email me, not because we're checking in, because I want to make sure you're okay. I think about the golden rule. So treat others how you'd like to be treated, elevating it to a platinum rule. So treat others how they would like to be treated. It starts with displaying empathy, asking questions about, okay, is there anything that we can do to make you feel more comfortable, to help you feel like you belong here? Being asked those questions would be really helpful. And I've done this myself, but the idea that, if you ask, even if you get it wrong, the person can appreciate your gesture and your effort in doing that, versus if you don't ask and you just make assumptions, you can find yourself screwing up a lot more than coming with that learning perspective.